Good afternoon and good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining and tuning in. You are on with WHTT for the Wash Your Hands episode. I'm Christina, and I'm delighted to be a host for the panel today. So thank you so much for the opportunity and inviting me. And I'm here today joined by a great panel of hospitality experts from around the world. I myself am a hotelier, and I spent over 6 years with Starwood Hotels and Resorts. And currently, I am working for Revenate, where I'm a part of our European customer success team, where I'm based out of Amsterdam. So it's great to be here today to talk to you all about health regulations in operations, guest experiences in the industry at the moment, where we're seeing how we're going to go about it in this world of social distancing and the new norm, and what will we get out of this, and how will we recover from the COVID crisis. If you have any questions during today's panel, please feel free to type them in the chat box, and we'll try to answer as many questions as we can. We'll be on for about 40 minutes, and we'll get back to you if there's anything we couldn't answer throughout today's session. That being said, I would quickly like to go around the room for the panelists to introduce themselves. So, Kelly, shall we start with you? Ladies first.
Sure. Hello, my name is Kelly Gardner. I am from the US, living in Amsterdam. Just a brief background, my family owns a travel agency since the 1930s, so I was kind of raised from that part of the industry, and started working for a hotelier about 10 years ago, and now I'm working with boutique hotels in different aspects. But to be relevant at the moment, working on how to kind of shift the mindset and be prepared for a sort of new generation, or however we'd like to describe it, of guests that are on the way. So, hello.
Thank you, Kelly. Alan, over to you.
Sure. How do you do? My name is Alan Young. I'm the co-founder of a company called Puzzle Partner Marketing. My co-founder is Ivana Johnson. Company's based out of Canada. I live just about an hour north of Toronto. Our primary mission is to work with B2B tech companies within the hotel and travel sector, as well as the healthcare and media and entertainment sectors. I started my career off in the hotel industry as the mini bar guy from Four Seasons. Worked in the operations for quite a while and transitioned over into hospitality technology probably about 20, 25 years ago. Since that time, I've worked with big and small companies. I was chairman of the board of directors of a group called the Open Travel Alliance, which connected CRSs with PMSs and OTAs, etc. And I've worked, as I said, large companies, small companies, and we started our firm approximately 7 years ago, helping travel and hospitality tech companies engage more effectively with the hotel industry. But it's primarily tech. So I'm glad to be here today and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Alan. And then over to you, Rajesh.
Yeah, hi. My name is Rajesh Vora. I'm based in London. I'm a humble hotelier. My family have been in the hotel business now for since the mid-70s, and I've been actively involved for about the past 30, 35 years. It's an extraordinary time and something that I thought I'd seen it all, but really we clearly haven't. I'm very honored to have been invited, and I hope we have some stimulating conversation and we'll all learn a little.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for the introductions. We were supposed to have another lady join us today, but unfortunately she has fallen sick, so I'm going to partake a little bit more in the conversation. But I'm happy to see that we have a great panel with everyone with great hospitality backgrounds, but now in different parts of the world and different specialities. So let's just jump straight into it. There's a lot of talk about the market slowly recovering. We see that obviously China is picking up because they're 3 months ahead of us here in Europe and in North America. And with this, a lot of the big hotel groups and chains like Hilton, Marriott, Accor are starting to release new statements on their processes and how they will be operating moving forward. So what processes do you see, and maybe Rajesh, you want to kick this off in terms of your group, that will be put in place in the short term, medium, long term, and what do you think is the biggest change for the way you're going to be operating moving forward?
Yeah, so as somebody in our warm-up described it, there's quite an interesting reset for us. And so I think we've had to furlough the largest proportion of our team, which has been a very difficult thing, and I think difficult for us as a company, but difficult for the employees too, because although the government in the UK, I don't know how much people know, but the government UK have been very generous in supporting people through this furlough, and are paying 80% of people's salaries, which is really, I think been really useful. But people are frustrated at home and they kind of want to get back to work. And when we have keeping in touch calls and whatever, they are just itching to get back. I think people don't get into the hotel business because they try to earn a living or because they are trying to become millionaires. They get in the hotel business because they like doing hotellerie. So that's been the first big thing. The other thing is that I think we're going to get to a situation where we're going to have to create some new positions, new roles, new responsibilities. Let's say, I think having somebody who's in charge of sanitation is kind of going to be an important thing. And yes, we've always had housekeeping teams, and we try and keep buildings clean and all that. But I think clean has a whole new meaning today. And what does it mean to the customer? What does it mean to the operations team? And more importantly, how do you persuade the customer that it is authentically clean, right? And I think that's kind of the marketing message is almost more complicated than the operational message. I think we can come to an agreement or a tick list of things that everybody should be doing. Regular cleaning of hotel lifts and this and that. Or we can go through a whole long list, and I'm sure we'll talk about some of them today. But how do we get it across to the customer, and how do we persuade them that it's safe to travel and it's safe to be in that building and it is authentically clean, and and get people moving again, because that's clearly important to all of us because our livings depend on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I saw both Alan and Kelly nodding their heads there while you were asking how we're going to get that message across. Kelly, do you want to add something to Rajesh's comment there?
Yeah, sure. I think there's a few elements involved when it comes to the messaging that's going to come from hotels or going to need to come from hotels. There's a lot of fear instilled in people right now. I mean, people are afraid of each other. They, cross each other on the street so they don't have to pass by each other. And with all of the rules and regulations about staying away from humans, I think that there's quite a kind of deep-seated psychological barrier that's going to need to be crossed when it comes to compassion and really authentically and genuinely speaking to guests. So it's not just going to be, the rooms are clean and here's the scientific list of why. It's going to be a more like a heartfelt kind of understanding that the hotel has the best interests of the guest in mind from different angles, besides just cleanliness. Also when it comes to space, like how hotels are kind of redesigning their space, or at least like thinking about how people will be comfortable moving around each other. When it comes to what kind of food and beverage options they'll be offering, are there immune boosting options, or is it just an overpriced menu that unfortunately some hotels have? So it's really kind of like mind, body, and soul, like the whole package of people feeling really taken care of, instead of just this is how we clean. I think that's not going to really be enough.
Yeah, and I think you're touching on a very, very good point there. Like, how can hotels turn this into an advantage now, right? Because your health regulations are going to change that much, and how you're going to communicate it, and how are you going to turn that into an advantage? Alan, do you have anything from your side you'd like to add to that topic?
Well, I think the cleanliness item or approach is going to be different, once again, based upon market segment. And it sounds weird, but I think at the end of the day, there's going to be a standard-based environment. Singapore is putting one in right now, whereby you've got to meet certain state or country requirements. In New York, for example, every restaurant in New York used to have a grating in its window. Unfortunately, most of them are closed right now, but that was something that you would know as a guest of that restaurant, that it had a certain rating. Having personally been in the hotel business from a long time ago. My wife says I'm terrible to travel with because I'm always looking at things in hotels that I shouldn't be looking at. I should be enjoying myself. But one of the things I've always looked at is ceiling intake areas where you know that the HVAC system is gathering its air from. And if I see them as being dirty, to me, that's always a put off. But maybe I was looking at it from too much of a minutia detail perspective. However, I think the environment of cleanliness is going to be inspected by our guests, and as such, we're going to have to not only reassure them that the property is clean and is welcoming them with open arms, and we've put in the proper measures in place to ensure the fact that the guest is going to be safe. But I also think they're going to start looking around more than they have previously. So that will enhance the cleanliness factor even that much more.
Yeah, I mean, I'd completely agree. And I think my friends always say that when they go traveling with me, that I put on my hotel face when I walk inside the front lobby of a hotel. And like, I guess it's ingrained in us. We can't help it. And I agree with you. We spot a lot of things that the regular customer doesn't get. Sometimes, thank goodness for that. But I think you're absolutely right. You know, there's going to be, you know, I don't think anybody really thinks about the air handling units in a public space until now, right? And now all of a sudden they're like, you know, what's the air conditioning look like, and is it clean, and how often the filters being changed, you know, and all these sort of things that people never thought about because it was kind of part of the magic, you know, secret sauce that took place somewhere in the background and no one had to worry about. And I think you're right, Al. I think people will be looking around much more carefully, and we're going to have to be aware that it needs to. And I mean, you know, let's be honest, how clean the intake filter is not going to change the spread of COVID, no matter what we say. But it is the image, it is the marketing message, it is the, you know, everything is clean here. We know what we're doing. It is, you know, it's sanitized and it's ready to go. I think that's again back to a marketing message is going to be a real challenge. I think
it's also it's psychological, right? If they can, anything that's visible to see will be in question in a way. Is it clean? Is it properly taken care of? So with the air filtration systems as well as materials. So it may be that hotels that have these plush materials and carpets and cushioning and things like that may feel like more uncomfortable now because people may want to see clean, more natural surfaces that they can test for themselves how clean they are, or that there's no, you know, dust mites or anything that can be held by plush materials. So I think design will also play a factor of like being able to physically see the cleanliness that's in all aspects of the room and the common spaces.
Yeah, certainly in our reopening strategy, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later in the call. Removing the nice things is going to be part of what we do, right? We are going to take away the cushions, and we are going to take away all sorts of, you know, throws and, you know, sort of nice things that make a place feel homey and comfortable and all that, because they're just another place for something to collect and for something to be you know, inappropriate. So yeah, I think the experience is going to be somehow diminished. I don't know if, you know, we that's, you know, whether that's what we want, but I think it's going to be diminished. And from those sort of things, I think, you know, we are going to see people take away a lot of stuff that's in the room, which has been a nice to have, but is no longer essential.
Yeah, will be interesting to see how to balance that, because you also don't want to be in a completely sterile feeling environment of like a, you know, a hospital room. So how will design and functionality change to kind of give still a safe, comfortable feeling?
Kelly, have you seen that with any of the customers that you work with? Because you're an expert in the field of boutique hotels, and what you're touching on here is very true. It's going to be very different for luxury and boutique hotels to still be able to hold on to that experience and the ambience and the atmosphere in the hotels. So have you seen anything specific in terms of good ideas or suggestions pop up?
So far, I think things are a bit on hold in a way, because boutique hotels, they don't want to, you know, be throwing away their beautiful furniture and pieces and things just yet. And to completely remodel may not be the time for that. So everything is still in kind of consideration mode. Like it's a bit on hold of what to do. Like there's recognition of the fact that things may need to completely be redesigned and changed, but budget-wise, because of what's happening, it's very hard for the changes to be implemented at this stage. So it's all
Yeah.
just in consideration stage. That's what I'm seeing with the hotels I'm
Yeah.
talking to.
Still a bit too early days. We'll,
Yeah.
we'll have to wait a few more weeks and see. So Rajesh mentioned it's all about how you position yourself in the marketing message. How you're communicating with your guests is always crucial, and probably even more crucial these days. In terms of hygiene, cleanliness, new processes, standards, how do you see that being communicated going forward, and how can that be an advantage for an independent hotel, a hotel group, especially now? Also, we'll come back to this a little bit later, talking about direct bookings and trying to take back your business from the OTAs. But Alan, you want to chime in here on some communication strategies or channels that you've seen working, or you think that could be crucial going forward?
Yeah. I think it was mentioned, obviously, some of the big players in the Americas have been stating the fact that they're putting plans in place. I asked an audience on LinkedIn the other day via my feed. Hilton had posted it, and I said, "Is that going to really change whether somebody's going to want to touch the TV remote or not?" Because as we all know, that's probably one of the things in the room that, sure, it'll get a wipe off, but even if somebody's gone crazy with Lysol on it, is somebody still going to say, "I want to touch that"? So I think we're going to enter into an environment of what I'm deeming touchless contact, where technology will advance in such a manner whereby the guest will be greeted, obviously, but how they check in may change. They may check in a completely different way than we thought was ever possible. Obviously, mobile's going to be something that's going to help people check in via device, paymentless, contactless payment. All of these different things that we would have been touching with something with another person are going to go away, and even down to opt-in facial recognition. And I was watching a terrifying show on TV called The Capture, about how the CCTVs in Europe are incredibly sophisticated versus other areas, and this is in London. They can see what's going on. I think they have 6 million cameras, give or take, within the London urban area. And right now, if there's a way to use your face to check in on a mobile device, and then there's a kiosk that recognizes it's you and says you're good to go. Now you go to the room and you go to the mobile app in order to open up the door. Will there be a change from a mobile app to a camera in the door that automatically recognizes you and walks you through that front door, opens it? So once again, you're not even touching the doorknob. So there are going to be a whole bunch of different technologies that come up very, very rapidly. And one of the other areas is in hotel restaurants, menus. There's already a company, Lodging Interactive, that posted a press release yesterday about the fact that they've come up with digital menus for restaurants and hotels. That's all well and good, unless you're a boutique luxury property that has a 68-page wine list. That how are you going to do that? How are you going to convey that to the guest? So I think technology will take a part of the burden off as we figure out what is the new normal and how we are able to supply the guest service to our guests that they expect and want, but also to ensure the fact that safety is in place. I don't want to see the images that we've seen already out of China where guests are being, their temperatures are checked upon arrival. They're greeted by people in almost full hazmat suits, and they're sprayed down with disinfectant before they even get to the front desk. And so hopefully that's not the new norm, because that, if anything, is going to change how we all react to what the hospitality should be about, which is connecting with people and building relationships with people.
Absolutely, exactly, and that's the challenge we're facing now. How we're gonna overcome it while still being on top of all these hygiene standards. So I'm gonna just take a few questions from the audience, if you guys are cool with that. So Maribel, she's been asking, Cleaning has new meaning. It's an interesting point, as we discussed. It's easy for operations or the operations team, but how do we communicate this properly? Rajesh, is this something that you guys have a part of your reopening plan or your strategy right now?
Absolutely. It's the fundamental part of the reopening. I mean, I think kind of one of the first things. So, I'd like to come back a little bit on what Alan said a minute ago, because I think it's important. A lot of the things that could help solve the potential problems we've got are going to take capital investment. And I think that's kind of a problem, because we know that the travel industry is going to have no money for capital investment for the foreseeable future. So we're going to have to make the best of what we have, because if I go to, I think we need to talk about thermal imaging cameras for people who've got a fever, and we need to talk about, changing all the door locks so you don't have a key card, but it's all either facial recognition or it's NFC with your mobile or whatever it is. But all of these things are expensive to do and take time and take capital. So I think we're going to have to try and sort out a solution which is as good as we can in the situation as it is. So in terms of communicating that, and I think it's very interesting to talk about the remote control, Adam, because I can't tell you how many hours of conversation about remote controls. I've discussed remote controls more than I think any reasonable hotel executive should ever have to do. And also air conditioning panels, right? Which is the other thing. Those are the two. Every person pretty much gets into a hotel room and touches those two things, whatever else they do or don't touch. So how are we going to persuade people? And we really haven't come to a solution, because are we going to put a cover on every, I remember once upon a time there was a fashion for putting a little banner wrapped around the toilet seat to say that this has been hygienically clean for your, for your comfort and pleasure. And that's kind of, that fashion went away. But are we going to have to do that? Are we going to put a panel on the, sort of cover on the air conditioning panel, or a little, thing around the remote control to say, look, it's being cleaned, and it's hygienic and blah, blah. And I don't know. We haven't really resolved. So that's one thing. And I think, communicate. So we're going to have a whole heap of things. And I said, we've got plans in place for changes, but we just don't know, which of those we're going to end up having to implement. And communication, we're going to just be, we've decided to be very actively not to go dark on our customers. I think that's kind of the first thing you do, is you hunker down and you go dark and you stop communicating with them. But we've sort of, re-upped our CRM game, and we're now communicating the plans that we have, and we're going to build out a special part of the website, which is going to talk about sanitation, is going to talk about all the things. And that's the best that we can do, we can think of doing anyway, to try and get the message across. And how effective it will be, I don't know.
So staying with you a bit, Rajesh, because I have a few questions from the audience.
Okay.
So there's a question first. Do you see removing extras like cushions being removed only for the time being, or is this something that you think is the new normal and we just got to get rid of? And then also on the back of that, because I think this is very tied up together, how much do you see the increase of staff training being needed around supporting guests?
So I'll take the second point first. Staff training is going to be absolutely fundamental. I guess, if you had a member of waiting staff who had a mark on their apron, you might deal with it or you might not, depending, and you might think, but now it's going to be, as soon as that's there, you're going to have to teach them that, look, that sends a message, whether it's true or not, but it sends a message that you're not taking care of your personal hygiene. So if it happens, go take it away, get a new one. So we're going to have to have, so there'll be a lot of that kind of stuff, which is going to be just about people's habits or things that there'll be a new normal. And then, but in terms of the how long the changes, I think it really depends on the progress of the disease, right? If the disease is relatively short-lived, like SARS was, or what are the other diseases that we've had to contend with, then I guess it'll be a 6-12 month program, and then we try and move things back to providing all those things, that the comforts that we want people to enjoy, because they do enjoy them. That's why we put them in the rooms. And so, but if this becomes a long-term proposition, i.e., there's no vaccine, there's no effective treatment, if it's going to be a new normal, and then I think they'll have to go for good, because there will be no purpose to having, the plan today is to take them out and bag them up and put them in storage, and then we'll see. But if the disease, and that's part of the whole problem with all of this, we don't know if we're looking at something which is a 3-month horizon, a 6-month horizon, a 9-month horizon, 12, 24, 36. Nobody can give you any straight answers, and I've stopped listening to politicians because I don't trust any of them. Alan was already told us that we're not allowed to talk about politics on this call, which is exactly the right thing. But I think we can all agree that there is no consistent messaging, neither from the health officials or from the politicians. So it completely depends on the progress of the disease, and that's how we'll judge it moment by moment.
Great, thank you. So just we touched upon a lot of operational aspects, which is hugely important, but I also wanted to go a little bit into detail on marketing and digitalization and during this crisis, or in general in the industry. And we talked a little bit about communication and how you should get your message across to your guests. And what we see these days is that hotels are investing even more time in their guest engagement and communication. And I would be interested to hear maybe from you, Kelly, how do you see this being changed now? And what are the opportunities moving forward in terms of having an even more on-point customer and guest engagement and communication?
Sure. So I think especially with independent or boutique hotels, they really have so much space to move in this and really create their own unique voice, and also to remind guests of their size. So for example, people may not want to be in larger hotels at the moment with 100 or 200 people. Whether or not 100 and 200 people are going to show up is a different story, but the idea of being in a big environment with a lot of people, and perhaps not the option to open your window in your room, where a lot of these hotels have these kind of factors. I think boutique hotels and independent hotels have a lot of space to really kind of stand out as being more personal and smaller, and maybe having to have less interaction with other people, and can do things quicker, like on different types of technology apps to be able to communicate with the hotel staff. So yeah, for the boutique industry, I think there's quite some leverage to really kind of stand out a bit, as opposed to for the bigger companies, that people will feel more safe, and to really kind of over communicate that and be as transparent as possible in the processes that the hotels are taking up, and how they care about their guests, and how they're looking at it from different angles besides just the cleanliness aspect.
Yeah, and we actually have a question from the audience here from Olga. So she asked about what specific tools, communication channels will you use to pass on the message to your customers to reassure them of what you're doing? Alan, you want to weigh in here? The space a little bit.
Probably better at answering this question than I am, but I think every communication method possible, whether it's via an email, whether it's via a mobile device, that they have an app that is directly attributed to the property. And I also believe that there will be something that needs to be seen on the website immediately. And it's going to have, I don't think it's going to have a flashing button, but I do think it's going to have to be very, very prominent on the website, that shows what steps the hotel or hotel group has taken in order to ensure the safety of its guests. Right now it really depends upon the search methodology of the guests and where they're looking. To your point earlier, I think this is going to be easier for hotel groups, both small and large, but for hotel groups to convey this message than it would be for an OTA, for example. Are the OTAs going to start grading hotels based upon their cleanliness factor versus their ranking, et cetera, and how much money they're willing to pay? But at the end of the day, it really is, I fully believe any communications method you can put out there, you should be utilizing. If you have a Facebook page, it should be on that. If you have a LinkedIn environment, which is being used quite heavily as of late, because we're all working from home and we're still trying to connect with people. But don't forget, a lot of the business travelers that are not traveling right now are on LinkedIn. So they're going to, if you have a hotel or a hotel group, you should also have a page on LinkedIn to start cultivating that level of communication.
Yeah, I agree with you, Alan. I think there's a great opportunity here, and we talked a little bit about it earlier as well, right? To drive that traffic to your direct channels now, because as you're saying, are the OTAs going to have this information on their channels or their sites? Probably not. So make sure that you're on point, you're on top of it. It's displayed all over your own channels, and as you say, you're mentioning a lot of good channels here. So driving traffic through your social channels, through email, and anything that you can now really make use of to own the guests, because I really think now's the time and opportunity to take over that ownership and kind of get back at those OTAs a bit. Kelly, did you want to add anything onto that, what Alan was saying as well?
Yeah, I think that also becomes a question of how this message comes across, which is still, of course, a question. So is it something that's a centralized decision, and who's making that centralized decision? So, Marriott and Accor and the big groups have decided their standards, and now they're going to come forward with their messages about that. But, for the rest of the hotel communities that are a bit smaller, they don't have, millions of dollars to come up with a complete marketing plan to market what they're doing. So will there be a centralized way to convey this message that it's kind of known across the board to travelers what the message means, or what the sort of stamp of approval means that this hotel is safe? So it's something that can be picked up more easily than having to go into the hotel's website and read what they're doing each individually. That may be confusing for people to
Kelly, Kelly, I want to ask you a question then, because you're obviously right on the ground. Do you see city associations or country associations, hotel associations helping with that effort?
I see that. I don't see anything yet that's pushing this across. I think that the will is there, because of course the governments and tourist boards want tourism to start up as soon as it's possible to do so. I do think that they play a big role in this, and they will be able to push the message out quicker, like in each individual city or tourist area or country. So to be able to work together with them, I think it would be ideal. But so far, I don't see that there's one tourist board that's rolling anything out yet.
I think we shouldn't underestimate the scale that it faces them, because how do they visit every single hotel, lodging establishment, guest house, blah, 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 and then they do an assessment, and that assessment is just good for that moment in time, and it may or may not reflect what tomorrow looks like or what yesterday looked like. I think so. I agree with Kelly. I think the will is there, but I don't think. I guess, like a lot of us, they don't really know where to start. Right? That is kind of really difficult. How do you scale up for that? How do you resource it? Who's going to be the arbiter of what is and isn't clean? Who's going to, what's the checklist look like? What things are important? What things are less important? And I think that's really the problem. I think that's where, that's why I think the big brands have gone to at the front of the curve, and to sort of lead central, message, top down kind of messaging. It remains to be seen how effective that is. I think it remains to be seen how effective it is in terms of then getting that message to the individual hotel, especially the ones which are franchised and not managed by the brands. What are they going to do? How are they going to enforce that? I've really no idea. It's not my problem, luckily, but it's kind of interesting. And also, are the customers getting that message? Because, if I talk to people who are not in our industry, and I asked them, have you seen what, Hilton are doing? I mean, who've been the biggest noises, right? Accor, Hilton, Marriott, I'd say we're the ones who made the most noise. But it's only us talking to ourselves at the moment. I don't think the customers have got this message at all yet. And so I suspect, and certainly for independent hotels like us, we pride ourselves on our relationships with our customer. That's kind of how we differentiate ourselves from the brands, because we have the ability to be, communicated on, and that's what I mean about not going dark. I think that's why it's so important for us. And so we will try and, get that message across through all the normal channels. And I think you had a good list of, whether it's LinkedIn or whether it's going to be, whether it's going to be Twitter or whatever, all those, Facebook, etc. We're going to do all those things. But and I think the other thing is that we're going to, I think we might get to a situation where, when GDPR came about, we ended up with every hotel company having a data protection officer. There was some chat in another of these seminars I attended a few days ago, which is, are we going to see a chief sanitation officer for each hotel? And maybe that's where it's going to get to, where we have to have that, and that's part of their job is to regulate, to measure, and to push the messaging out. Because I think that's a whole new world that we have to live in.
Yeah, absolutely. A really good point, Rajesh. There's so many questions coming in. It's amazing to see, and really engaged audience. And we're almost on time, but I wanted to touch on a few more things, maybe if for the next 5 minutes before we have to drop off. So going back a little bit to what you were talking about earlier, Alan, you were touching a bit upon the technology. Check-ins will change, that we will have to adapt. So there's a question here saying, in order to do this, we probably have to adapt our systems. So as that always comes with the cost, but also now, is it the right time to be looking at our tech stack and what we're doing, and how would you recommend going about that moving forward?
Well, yeah, I guess now is the right time, as your hotels are not running full, or some of them are actually closed, which is incredibly unfortunate. I think you can evaluate what needs to be done or for the future. And as Rajesh said, there's, obviously some constraints from a cost price revenue perspective. However, you can definitely be taking a look at what the future holds. There was a fantastic article written by the IT director of Four Seasons in Dubai yesterday about a cacophony of items that were going to dramatically change the environment moving forward. And, none of them are cheap at the end of the day. Some of them will be intrusive in nature, but you definitely should be taking a look at, what it's going to take. Will there need to be new fields in the property management systems organized so you have a way to recognize the guests, and maybe there's a health field that we never thought we would ever have to have in there that might even be government mandated, things like that. And and then there's integration, as technologists tend to do. They tend to build stuff very, very quickly and get it to market, but they completely forget that in order to make it run effectively, it needs to integrate with these 3 or 5 or 7 different systems. So, that always needs to be made very, very aware of during the purchase decision, and also while you're reviewing the technology you have on property and what technologies you may need moving forward.
Absolutely great. Thank you. I want to just go around the room and see if there's anyone. There's just so many questions, so we're going to get back to you after. We might have to do a part 2 here. Anything either you and maybe Rajesh or Kelly want to add that before we round off, to anything you're doing these days or you're working on that is part of reopening or recovery strategy?
So at the moment, we are in the unfortunate position that all our hotels are closed. That was kind of mandated, inverted commas, by the UK government when they sort of put everybody in lockdown. And now there are a few hotels that have started to open back up again in the UK, but kind of everything is closed. So I guess we are trying to do what we can remotely, making plans, building, strategies and all the rest. But the real challenge, I think, is the next phase, which is the implementation phase. And that's going to be, we're effectively going to have to end up opening like a new hotel opening, yeah. Whether that's, dry goods, or whether that's, getting everything reserviced, or whether it's whatever it might be. I think all these things are going to be part of the challenge. And so, yeah, I think we've got a mountain to climb, and few people to do it with at the moment. And that's I think the biggest challenge that we face.
Thank you, Rajesh. Kelly, any last words on strategies or tips before we round off?
Yeah, I wrote an article recently with 10 tips for hoteliers. I can share this afterwards.
That would be great. We'd love to share that with the audience and everyone following.
Okay, good. And I mean, in the meantime, I'm working on ideas that we were actually just touching on how to potentially centralize this marketing message and how to bring it together to a bigger audience. So, I mean, as we mentioned, there's so many details and layers and possibilities in this, and things would need to be checked up on a regular basis. It's not just like a one-time stamp and you're clean and safe and you can go. It's like, how do you regiment this and keep it consistent? Also, with all of the different restrictions that are in all the different countries, you know, you've got a hotel in Bali, which is like completely open and facing the beach, as opposed to a small hotel in New York, which has tiny rooms and one small window. So how do you have the same regulations? You know, it's going to be quite an array of how you get the message across. It's not just, you know, one standardized way of being safe. So yeah, I'm working on that and how to help the industry and help boutique hotels to reopen with this sort of, you know, bigger message to kind of come together to be able to.
Great. Yeah. Interesting. There's
travelers are looking for it as well. You know, like how do they know where to go and what's safe and what to do? So for both sides, they need that bridge of like, how are the hotels going to communicate it, and how are the people that are coming to the hotels going to know it? So it's
absolutely. And as we talked about earlier, it's been tough times and it's challenged the industry tremendously. But there's a lot of positive aspects and opportunities that will come out of this, and we just have to adapt as we go along and learn while we're doing it. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. Thank you so much for everyone listening and tuning in. Don't forget to tune back in next week and follow WHTT on social channels. It's been great having you with us, and we look forward to speaking with you again soon. Thank you, and have a good day, everyone.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're holding up a